What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to talk a little bit more about OP13 because we've had some interesting developments, and I promise we'll stretch it out too to cover some other booster boxes and sets just to provide a little bit more value. But last night in the Discord, I posted a link to Kansan Games, which if you're not in Canada, they're an LGS up here, and they generally have fairly decent pricing. But what I saw last night, they put their Wave 2 pre-order for OP13 up at $179.95 Canadian. So if you guys don't know the conversion, that's about 128 USD. And if you bought a case, you actually saved 5% for most of us up here in Canada. After paying the, I believe, GST, it would be 5%. So you're basically paying 180 Canadian or 128 USD per box, all in after fees and shipping. And I think they had about 12 cases when I looked around. It must have been around 2 a.m. I think this morning technically. And by the time I woke up today, they were sold out. So a lot of those boxes moved super fast. I mean, OP13, it's kind of crazy that they're even listing their Wave 2 for this price. In my opinion, this might have something to do with them having to pay potential invoices for like Pokemon distro. We have Phantasmal Flames come in, then believe after that a couple other hype sets. It just doesn't really make sense to me why a company would be blowing out OP13 at this price. Even like stores that have relatively good pricing like HPW, they're still at $200. So the fact that there's a store in Canada blowing out this many boxes below 200 Canadian, like below 130 USD, it's just crazy that they're doing this. So I do think there's going to be a lot of OP13 out there. My guess, again, I've talked about this multiple times, it seems like Bandai is slightly increasing their print runs. Again, I don't have any data for that. That's just what I'm guessing based on what I'm seeing on the secondary market in terms of supply. But the interesting thing I wanted to talk about a little bit today, and we'll relate this to all the other sets, is what the top 10 value is going to look like in the set. And we have a little bit better idea now that some of the top cards have sold on eBay. TCG Player obviously still really can't tell that much. The one thing to note though is that the Ace is an error card essentially, so there will be an errata version of that in future print cycles, but we know what a lot of the top cards are selling for now. So for example, the Demon God pack with Emu, these are down to I think like 3,000 USD, and I think I saw someone in Canada trying to get like 3,000 Canadian. So I imagine these aren't actually going to be that expensive. Kind of makes sense in my opinion. I mean, the Five Elders, they're important to the story, but they're just not super popular characters compared to a lot of the other characters that we see in this set. I wouldn't be surprised if these cards end up around like $100 to $200. Maybe they're a little bit more a month or two after release, it's possible. But I personally just can't see these being like $300, $400, $500 cards. Now, which cards will be in the top 10 and be more than $500? Well, I think the Ace Wanted poster will be one of those. I mean, it's already selling for $500 as you can see here. And I think with it being an error version, at least the first edition of it, right? Those are going to be collectible cards. I mean, Ace is a popular character. Wanted posters are cool. So I think that will probably be in the top 10 and stay in the top 10 when we look at OP13. Obviously, all the regular mangas and the red mangas will be in there. We now have a little bit of sales data on eBay. The Sabo and the Ace, they're both selling around $1,000 USD on eBay. I think this will probably drop. Maybe they get somewhere between like $500 and $700. That would be my guess. But I think out the gate, they will be closer to $1,000. The Gold Shanks, I mean, this we've looked at as well. It's selling over $1,000. I think as high as like $1,500. So say $1,000 there as well. The regular Luffy, this sold $1,500, and I believe this was today when I looked this up. I don't think it's going to hold around $1,500, the regular Luffy, but I do think it'll probably be closer to $1,000 a month or two after release. It will be the most expensive out of the three. And now the red mangas, the red super alternate arts, whatever they're calling them. The Sabo, we had one sell on eBay. This is a good data point, and a best offer of $2,600 was taken. So I think we can assume the Ace will be fairly close to this in that like 26, 2,500 range, maybe even slightly more. And then the big boy, the Monkey D. Luffy red manga, this sold 7,100 or best offer. There was a best offer taken of $5,700, but that is a massive sale that is going to affect the next dozen or so. And when we add all these up, right, because that's really the important part, and we're going to do a comparison to all the other sets, I think that a top 10 value the first week of release, somewhere around $14,500 is very realistic. It might even be higher than that if that $5,700 sale stays consistent, right? If it's still in that 5.56K range, definitely realistic to see somewhere between 14 and 15,000. If those red mangas do tend to come down a little bit, maybe it'll be closer to like 13,000. Either way, nothing else is even close in comparison. For example, the second closest set, I believe, top 10 value is currently OP09 at $7,587 USD approximately. A lot of that is in the Gold Roger and the Luffy manga, but then you have the Shanks, you have the Blackbeard and Buggy as well. And with the Nami and Boa Hancock SPs moving up in price, definitely a lot more value there than there was maybe a couple months ago. You also have a couple other sets close to OP09 in terms of top 10 value. For example, OP05, you're at $7,191 in value. And then also PRB01, you're at $6,356. And these are both really strong sets. I mean, PRB01, you have the God Pack, you have a lack of reprints. OP05, it has probably the best manga, one of the best mangas. And then you also have the Ichiro stamped card. So there are reasons why I like all of these sets. But the thing that I want to draw your attention to right now is when you look at the average price of top 10 value out of every set released in One Piece so far, and this is including this OP13 estimate, so if you don't include that, it would be lower, but include that estimate, which I think is very realistic for the first week, your average top 10 value is around $3,650, and the median is $2,358 approximately, which is Romance Dawn. Surprise, surprise. So Romance Dawn is basically right in the middle now when it comes to top 10 value. Obviously, there are other reasons why I think you should invest in Romance Dawn. The blue bottoms, we're not getting more of those. It's already just like guaranteed deflationary. Even the white bottoms at this point, I highly doubt we're getting more. It's the first set. You have the pre-errata cards as well, which in the blue bottom cases and boxes would bring this top 10 value up. But when it comes to deciding where to put most of your dollars in One Piece investing, you really do need to look at which sets have the most value. And outside of the top 5 or 6 sets, there really isn't much worth investing in my opinion. For example, OP13, it's super obvious that this is going to be a good investment long term. Even if they print this into the ground, there's still going to be value there. Also, your OP09, it's a no-brainer. OP05, another absolute no-brainer. Same thing with PRB01. And then you have a couple other sets that I think do make the cut by a decent amount. For example, EB02, 3,700. That's well above the median. Same thing with OP11, sitting at over $5,000, kind of in a tier of its own at this point with those gold and silver Luffy's kind of carrying. And you can definitely make arguments to put money into other sets. For example, OP12, it's fairly cheap. It still has a decent top 10 value, which is above the median. PRBO2, same deal. It's above the median also. It's a set that, because it's a premium booster, likely not going to get as many reprints, if at all, compared to some of these other mainline sets. What else is in there? I mean, maybe you look at something like Wings of the Captain, slightly above like the bottom tier sets, but it's getting fairly old at this point. We're probably not going to get more of it. But when you look at these numbers, it's very hard to justify something like Two Legends, Royal Blood, you know, even Pillars of Strength and Kingdoms of Intrigue, even Paramount War you can throw in there actually, because that's lower than Kingdoms of Intrigue. It's really hard to justify making massive positions in these sets when there are so many better options out there. I mean, if you're looking at the first 4 sets in One Piece, Romance Dawn just seems like the absolute no-brainer in comparison to the other 3. And then when you look at anything after that, I mean, OP05 just leagues above basically everything else before PRB01, and then PRB01 and 09. I mean, they're just better than basically everything else as well that Bandai has released so far. I don't know why my computer keeps spazzing out like this, but the point I'm trying to get across in this video, which hopefully makes sense looking at the numbers, is that there's really only 3 or 4 strong sets in One Piece that I feel super confident in. And that OP13 coming out next week is, based on our estimates, right, for the first week, going to be well above any of these other sets. So if you don't have OP13, I definitely recommend getting at least some level of exposure to it. I think you will regret not having any in a couple of years, even if the print runs are being ramped up, even if they do print more in the future. There's going to be a lot of value in those top red mangas, the regular mangas, and then even some of the SPs are going to be absolutely juiced. But you guys let me know in the comment section down below what you think. If you got some value out of this, I'd really appreciate if you leave a like, subscribe to the channel. It really does help out a ton. Thank you guys in advance if you do decide to do that. Also, if you are shopping eBay, TCG Player, Hobbiesville, I do have affiliate links down below. Free and easy to use. All you have to do is click on it before you do your shopping. I'll get a small percentage of the sale at no extra cost to you. So it's a free and easy way to support the channel. But with all that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe wherever you are in the world, and I'll catch you in the next one.